Hi everyone, I'm Sam, founder and CEO of Everything MRI, and today I just want to bring you some news about next week, MRI Safety Week. We're basically doing some challenges. We want to get the community together, involved in discussions and sharing their insights and thoughts. Also, I did today a very good interview with 𝘩𝘕𝘏𝘐. It's just a small one. I asked him a few questions about MRI safety in general, about remote scan, about his new book. I think you're gonna enjoy it. So just stay put and the video comes just right up. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's very nice.
Of course.
It's very nice to see you, to finally speak to you in person, virtually of course. It's been hard for us to actually find some time to meet.
I know. I know you're very busy as well as I am, so I can relate.
Wonderful.
I've been in the industry for 32 years, and I retired from the VA hospital here in Phoenix, Arizona in 2020, and thought I was done, and got back into teaching again, which is my true passion. And I've been working on this book for 20 plus years, and some of my students really kind of drove the needle in and said, 𝘩𝘕𝘏, I think this would really benefit as a student or as a technologist. So I got back with my publisher, and we've been running on this for the last year and a half, trying to get things put together, and it finally came all together, and it's really exciting. So it hasn't really hit me yet that I actually wrote a book yet. So
I feel you. I wrote some books as well, and actually one of my books is coming out this week, I hope. It's a crime novel about the crime in an MRI department.
Oh, wow.
So I feel you. I know exactly the feeling of having something that you built in your hand finally.
Right.
The main reason I have you here today, it's because MRI Safety Week is coming next week. And we're trying to do some challenges, trying to do some interviews, some kind of videos and promotion. And I really want someone with your weight within the community to speak about the MRI safety at the moment, how we're dealing with it, what's new, what is challenging. And that's why I draft a few questions for you, if you're happy.
Yeah,
to answer.
those are perfect. I mean, you hit them. You hit it. I couldn't have done any better. So no, those were, I think, those 4 questions hit right on the spot of, especially of what's going on right now.
Wonderful. So if you don't mind, I will just crack on with them.
Perfect.
The reason why I ask those specific questions is because they are things that I'm actually passionate about. Those are things that I believe will change the paradigm of how we do MRI and safety in general. So the first question I had and I sent to you was, what are your thoughts in terms of where we stand at this point in terms of MRI safety? Did we evolve anything since the Columbine incident? Did we evolve anything since the new ACR manual was posted online for people to comment on it? Where do you feel like we are at this point? What's your feeling regarding the MRI safety situation as we speak?
A great question. As of late, Samuel, I think it's worse, especially here in the States. I work closely with Tobias, on if there's any instances or if there's any incidences, in the States. I try to get him that information. I think it all comes down to education. I'm a big believer in education, and I think this is where we're lacking the understanding and the importance of controlling access into Zone 3 and Zone 4. And complacency is a big thing that I see or hear about that's been going on with some of these major incidences. Like Arizona has had 3 major incidences in the last 6 months.
Yep.
And I believe, in my opinion, it's complacency and education and lack of education.
How do you feel like we should tackle that lack of education? Is it on the ground with the radiographers, or you think, for me, for my experience, I think we should tackle it from the students up?
Yes.
Start with universities. That's my point of view, and that's why we're tackling a little bit the universities with VR tools and try to make them understand what's the issue with the MRI safety nowadays. So from my point of view, I believe we should start from the bottom up. But what's your view on that? Where should we start doing this kind of training?
Completely agree. It starts with the student. I know my program and Smith Chasen's program is built around MR safety. Day one, they start MR safety. We don't wait until 3 or 4 months until they're in the program or a year later. Day one, we start going over the importances of the zones. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4. Also, screening. I think screening I've seen on personal attempts that when people are screening, they're not taking it seriously. They're not doing that, to screening what the ACR recommends, where you screen the patient once and then right before they get into Zone 4, you screen them again. Do a quick screen. I've caught a few patients where, personally, where they come in and you screen them the first time, and by the time you get them, to Zone 4 and enter into the magnet room, they'll start remembering stuff, and then I'll do a quick screen. And I always hear the word, I'm sure a lot of people can relate, is, oh yes, you know what, I forgot about that bullet in my neck, or you know what, I did work with metal, and there's possibility I do have metal in the eye. So it seems redundant, but redundancy is so important with MR, just like scanning, repetition.
It's kind of a checklist, right? We have to do a checklist over and over again and just make sure we tick all the boxes and double tick them if needed be.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
I fully agree.
It starts with the student. It starts with the student, and if not, then we need to keep getting that message out that we cannot be complacent. We need to take this very seriously, because people and kids keep getting injured.
Do you think there's something wrong with the way we're passing that message? Because I can see people like yourself, like Canal, Shell, Tobias, Faulkner, all these names. We have courses, we have awareness every day. We have an MRI Safety Week all around the world. And as you said, you feel like it's getting worse. I feel the same. I feel it's getting worse here in UK as well. Do you think it's a matter of the approach, the method that we're using, or is actually something fundamentally wrong with the way we're doing things? Because from my perspective, I think we should start from the students, as we said, but I believe there's something fundamentally wrong with the radiographer or the technician's profession that doesn't allow us to actually follow those checklists.
A little bit of both. I think, speaking of where I'm at, but this goes all over. Places are trying to get more patients in during the day at quicker times, and not giving the technologist the time to actually really screen the patient, because number one, they're always feeling rushed. They're an hour and a half behind because they're being booked every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes. So it puts a little bit of pressure back on the technologist. And, when you have someone, an organization that's all they care about is the numbers, we're not going to see a decrease in incidences if that doesn't change. So it's going to have to start with, putting, Manny Canal, Faulkner, everybody to push ACR and mandating that, there has to be rules and accountability. And if there's no accountability, then nothing's really going to get better.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And it's good that you touched the point of, I think it comes down to lack of staff, actually. We want to do more and more with less and less. And that brings me to two of my next questions. One of them is, how do you see AI being beneficial for the teaching of tax and RADs and helping the profession? And the second one, which is, we could put it together kind of, is the remote scanning. Because I myself wrote an article about remote scanning, and I believe remote scanning can help a lot. but of course he needs to have very strong process behind. We need
Yes.
very, very dedicated and thorough SOPs and policies to make sure the safety side of it is completely assured. And of course we're not there yet. I believe we're still not there. But what's your thoughts in terms, what's your overall opinion in terms of remote operations and AI coming into the radiology world to help us scan faster, scan more with less resources, making more money, let's put it that way?
Right. AI, I like the idea. With GE coming out with ARDI, I experienced it a few months ago, seeing the differences between the images and how fast they can produce these images. I think it's wonderful, especially for patients that are claustrophobic or, are very sick and ill that can't hold still. But we need to focus on patients, not numbers.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the confusion, or the organizations like hearing, oh, MRIs are going to be much faster, we can get patients through much quicker. I think what it was meant was that we can get the patients done faster, but it'll give the tech more time to screen the patient, get a better history, keeping the time the same. But even though that we're going to have that throughput faster with the patient, we should put that time and emphasize that time back with the technologists so they can do a better job, so they don't feel rushed, or, even when they're short-staffed, they could do a high-quality job with the patient.
So if I understand what you're saying, basically we use the same, let's say 30-minute slot for one part, but with AI, instead of scanning the patient for 20-25 minutes, we'll scan the patient for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we allow the rest of the slot to actually do the safety bit, to actually do the patient care, the candor, and all the positioning and all of that. So that should be the main goal of using AI within our departments. Yes. But I don't think that's what's happening.
I know, and it's disappointing to hear that, and because the images are absolutely beautiful.
Indeed,
taking that background noise out and having, high quality images for patients that are really sick. And that's where we've always struggled with, is trying to get that high quality product for the radiologist to read when patients are moving or they're very ill, or even with children too. Scanning pediatrics is not easy as well. I think ARDI is perfect for the pediatric population, but I think they forget that it's quality of patient care, and it's disappointing to find out that there's a couple places that I've heard that are going down to either 10 to 15 minute increment appointments because of this AI, and
that's my experience
it's disappointing to find out.
Not in my hospital, but my experience from talking to colleagues is exactly the same. So we have a 30-minute slot. Oh, with AI, we're going to put 2 patients in. Instead of doing the same patient, they want to do 2 now. And of course, that makes more money. And of course, we live in a capitalist society, and that's the way to go. But I believe we're going backwards, to be honest, in terms of our profession. We're going back instead of moving forward. We should be more worried about our patients, more worried about how we deal with them on a day-to-day basis. Claustrophobic patients are a big cohort, pediatric as well, another big cohort that I believe both of them benefit a lot from the AI. The rest of the patients, I think it's just a matter of scanning as fast as we can, making as much money as possible. And that's where I have my reservations in terms of application of AI. And I'm glad you share that opinion. I believe most of the people that are going to be listening to this probably will resonate with that. Being there, work on a private hospital or even the public hospital. For example, here in UK, the NHS has huge backlog of scans to be done. And of course, now with the aging of the population and more implants being put in, that makes even more pressure on these hospitals to get a higher throughput of patients. And of course, the AI is being used, I believe, in the wrong kind of direction. But it's interesting to understand your perspective from the other side of the pond, because I believe we're all struggling with the same thing.
Completely. No, and it's refreshing to hear that everybody is going through the same thing. I just, I'm hoping, again, it's all going to come down to having people like you and I and 𝘩𝘕𝘴𝘴𝘏 and Manny Canal and Tobias to really put pressure on guidelines, SOPs, policies, to make sure that, the technologist is number one is safety. Number two is patient care. I think they go hand in hand, and getting back to where we need to be, because again, I do not see it getting any better with these, near misses or major catastrophes.
Absolutely. And I think, adding to that point that you just mentioned, that we don't see kind of improvement coming anytime soon.
No.
I understand why people push back the remote scanning as well. I'm
Yes.
very passionate about it. I like the idea. I like the concept. Not only for the comfort of the radiographers, but also to make sure we get more scans done as well. Because the remote scanning is of course facilitating the fact that one radiographer can do 2 scans at the same time, having in mind that we have the proper safety in place.
Yes.
And I think that we are way far from that. I like the idea itself, but I think we're still not there. And if we're going in a trajectory that it's not up but down in terms of safety standards, where does that put us when remote scanning arrives? Because I know that's happening all over the world. I partnership with a few
Yes.
companies that, one of them, for example, is running 500 machines at the same time,
Right.
in different hubs. I know about other companies that are running their own remote scanning operations, and I'm a bit scared where we're gonna go from here. So I would like to hear
I am
your
too.
point of view on that.
I am very nervous about the remote scanning. I mean, when I first started MR and remote scanning came about, it was made for a technologist that was struggling on a particular exam where a radiologist could come in and log in and help, or applications could, like Siemens or GE or Philips, could come in and log in and kind of help the technologist through that exam. And then obviously when COVID hit, I think they took it a step or a few steps further,
Absolutely.
where they're like, well, we can do this, we can have a tech at home and scan 4 or 5 patients at the same time. I don't think that's what it was meant for, but they, with times were going on with COVID, they were pretty much pushed up against the wall. However, there was no policies, no procedures, no thinking of safety, training these tech aides or positioner aides, and not training them properly. It's now it's doing a full circle, and it's biting everybody in the butt. And this is why we're seeing more incidences, I believe, because of they're not doing it properly. It's not going to go away, obviously,
Of course.
but we need to, as a community, we need to form, we need to form a group where, okay, these are the proper policies and procedures on remote scanning. These are the policies and procedures on, AI, and just go all the way down the line. And I think, and I believe, with Dr. Canal and Toby, if everybody gets together and goes to ACR or some of these accreditations and saying, hey, this is how it needs to be so we can scan patients safely.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. I know there's a few companies doing this already, and we had conversations. Some of the companies spoke to me about doing actually a trial cross country. So, for example, me in UK scanning a patient in US, and as beautiful that sounds and as interesting that sounds to me, it's actually scary as well at the same time, because I don't know who's positioning the patient. I don't know who's training those RDAs and who they are actually. And my question is, are you aware of any of these operations already running? And if you are aware, do you know who's training these people? Because they're not accredited, I believe, these RDAs.
No, I don't. Yeah, all I hear is, some of the companies here, for their training for the tech aid or positioners is they watch a couple videos. That's not training.
That's not training
and then
at
they're
all. No.
expected
That's
to
like taking
control access.
a law degree on YouTube, something like that. Yeah.
Right. This is not a YouTube thing. It's, this, I mean, it takes us years to understand the safety, for MR and understanding how to control access. And I believe a couple of videos isn't going to do it. And that's where the complacency comes in, where, these tech aids or positioning aids, they really don't understand the ramification of you can really hurt somebody in the MRI unit. There are really good tech aids and positioners out there. I've worked with
Absolutely.
some, but it's up to the technologists too, as well, is to take them under their wing and really, mentor them, the understanding the importances of MR. But again, it goes back to, short staff. They're too busy. They scan every 15 minutes. I don't have time to train them.
I think VR, AR, or holographic kind of technology will play a role here in terms of remote scanning, because we can use those tools to, for example,
Sure.
I partner with a company already. They do a lot of they are a tech company. They don't do remote scanning. They produce software and hardware for other companies to do that. And
Nice.
what they do is that hardware allows you to be at home and speak to the patient while you scan them. But yeah, it's one of a kind, and I'm really proud that I'm partners with them.
Wow.
Because it's one of the rare companies that actually does it. Most of them allows you to, for example, we scan from Siemens, and there's other companies out there. They actually allow you to scan, but you can't speak to your patient. What these guys do, they allow you to speak to your patient. But on top of that, I think one of the ways to do is, because we need to look at the liability when we're doing these kind of scans, because if I'm doing it at home, who's liable for the safety of my patient, right? And I think one of the ways to go, and this is me just brainstorming with you, would be, while I'm scanning and communicating with my patient, before I do that, I could actually have a video call with my patient and do the safety questionnaire myself. And I do the safety questionnaire, I go through the questions myself, and then that takes a little bit of the burden of the safety aspect from the RDAs, and the RDAs could basically just change the patient and position it. So that's my kind of overview. And of course, we could use technology to do this. We could use an hologram of ourselves doing it. Of course, this is way in the future, or use some kind of VR. But I believe that would be easier in terms of liability, in terms of responsibility when it comes to safety. Because if you have an RDA, as you said, that was trained just looking at some videos, they have no clue if this pacemaker can go or not, or if that clip can be scanned, or that stent, or whatever. But if you are a technologist at home, like yourself or like myself, and we have this training, intensive training, we know what we're talking about, we speak to the patient face to face on our computer before scanning them, and then we can also continue that conversation while we scan the patient, saying, I'm still Sam, I'm just talking to you, how are you feeling, do you want to come out, tell me how the scan is going. So I think for me that should be the way to go, but I know we're very far from it. And I would like to hear your opinion on that. Do you think that's something that would change that?
That's refreshing to hear. I really like the video, the one-on-one, because I, as a technologist, would be very nervous about putting anybody on the table that I have not talked to.
Absolutely.
Even though that the RDA is, supposed to be competent and everything, it's still my license.
It's still your patient as well, right?
Right. And I want to talk to the patient. I want to know what's going on with the patient. I
want to have some rapport with him, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Correct. So no, I think, to be honest, Samuel, I think we're closer than we think, especially with the technology today. I don't, or I feel that it's closer than we think if it's set up correctly.
Absolutely.
So that's refreshing to hear, and that actually is something that I would probably like to see and be interested in all as well. So
wonderful. That's something that I'm actually trying to implement here in UK. But yeah, I still didn't manage to do it. But that's something I'm in conversations with some companies. Sorry, and I believe that this is the way I wanna go. I want to have as much contact as possible with my
yes,
patient from the time he comes in, from the time he goes out. And of course, liability and responsibility of the scan is a big thing that needs to be divided between the actual institution and the person scanning at home, the third party.
right.
But that's something that I believe is going to change by the end of the year. There's a very interesting conversation
That's
going
exciting.
on that event that I was telling you about. I think there's going to be a discussion there. I would love you to attend. But I think this brings us to my last question that I had for you, which is about your book. So we're talking about education from top down. We're talking about remote scanning. I believe your book will be a great tool to introduce to everyone. So just tell me a little bit about your book. You already told me that it took you a while to do it. I
Yes.
know the pain of writing a book. So just tell me all about it. I want to learn a little bit more about your book and how we did it and why you did it.
Great. It was painful, but it was well worth every blood, sweat, and tear. It's something that I've been wanting to do for 20 years, and I've implemented protocol books through, as being in charge of MRI departments in the past, and it always seemed that the technologists were very appreciated of having something kind of like a backup, like, oh, you know what, I haven't done a clavicle in a while. They would open up the protocol book and it would be right there, and they could, reference that. So I always had that throughout the years, and it always made me feel really good that that my staff would come to me and say, you know what, we appreciate you having that for us. So I took it up a couple levels when I started teaching as a program director 3 years ago. I had two of my students. We were in lab one night, and I was sharing one of my protocols, and they were so impressed and made them feel at ease while they're scanning. And they're like, well, Doug, what, is there a book? Can we buy this? Is there something that we can do? And ever since then, I was pushed to get this product out there. I felt, especially for students and even the techs that are experienced, that it's a great resource to go back to. It has everything in there. It has all the neuro protocols, all the body protocols, the MSK protocols. I even have cardiac MRI in there, where basically it shows, your 2-chamber, 4-chamber, short axis, and it shows not only the setup but the outcome. This is what the image should look like after you use these different angles. So I was, a lot of work, but I felt it was very important. So it doesn't matter if it's a student or a tech that has 20 years, when they're scanning cardiac, for example, if they scan cardiac, they'll know what the image should look like while they're scanning. And I believe that it's extremely important. It takes the pressure off them. And also, I'm a big believer in anatomy, and the book is extremely detailed in anatomy. It has everything labeled for you. It's all on one page. You don't have to go through 2 or 3 pages to find, different parts of the anatomy of the body section that you're imaging. So everything is right there for you. And it has breast MR in there. And most importantly, I have a separate section just on MR safety. And this will help folks that are in big organizations. They can develop an MRI safety committee. There's actually a policy, an example of an MRI policy in their forum, adverse event forms.
Have you thought about doing a pocket version of it, where I can just carry a tiny version of it, where we have the main highlights of your book? Because I think of course, the book itself can stand next to the console and stay there
Sure.
for the department for staff to consult. But I would think it would be interesting for radiographers to be able to buy the pocket version and have it on their own. And if they move, for example, there's a lot of radiographers that work agency and they work here, then work there. They could carry
Right.
their own pocket book, you
Yep.
know. I think that would be awesome as well. I don't know if you're thinking about it, but if you're not,
Yes.
I leave the suggestion.
Oh, no. Great. And and we're working on that right now, Samuel. It's called my e-version. So it's an
Wonderful.
electronic version of my book.
All right.
They can download it on their tablet, on their phone. They can carry it with them for, as long as they,
That
as
sounds
long as they have
amazing.
their code. And the travel techs too. There's, I know a lot of my friends that are travel techs, and they travel all over and they're working on different machines. And having that option as an e-version where they don't have to carry that book with them, they can just open up their tablet and just have the download. They just put their code in there and they're all set to go. So we're looking at the end of this month.
Awesome.
I know my publishing team and I are meeting tomorrow to do the final walkthrough of it, and we're hoping to have it available at the end of this month. So
that sounds amazing. Doug, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me, to answer my questions, to brainstorm a little bit. So I can share this video with the community during the MRI Safety Week. I think it's going to be very educational. I hope to have some engagement with anyone from the MRI community. And I just want to really thank you so much for taking this time.
No, thank you. And Samuel, it's an honor to be on the podcast with you. I think you guys are doing exciting stuff with everything with everything MRI. I cannot wait to see some of these new things that you have coming out, and I'm a big fan. So
wonderful.
Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Doug.